All right, so we're recording. All right. Hey, everybody. I am Zahir Calloway, co-founder of the Mino Learning Collaborative.
Hi, everyone. I am Aisha Bryant. Pronouns are she, her, co-founder of the Mino Learning Collaborative.
And I'm Luisa Santos, current school board member for Miami-Dade County Public Schools District 9.
Yay. Okay, so let's get started. We are very excited to have Miss Luisa Santos, our radical educator highlight for Women's History Month, who run the world, ladies. Uh, now, before we begin, like always, we're going to dive into our norms. So we accept incompletion, speak from experience, assume best intentions, no change without challenge, and always honoring pronouns. Now, so our first question of the night, Ms. Santos, what makes you passionate about Miami's students and teachers, especially its BIPOC communities?
Yeah, that's a great question because Miami is such an interesting kind of alignment of the BIPOC community that looks different from many other places. And so I think what is most exciting and makes me most passionate is really the intersectionality that exists between the many systemic inequities that affect our community. And so we know that all of the racial inequity, environmental inequity, educational inequity is tied, and really knowing that I can tackle one of those, I would say, points in an intricate web, knowing that it's going to have repercussions outside of that makes me feel extremely passionate about the work that I get to do every single day. And knowing that we have educators and students from so many different communities, I really think is a huge asset. And we need to look at the next generation of leaders, our teachers and our students, as the key to solving the challenges we're facing. And I get the pleasure and honor of doing that every day through a fellowship program that I founded in my office, where I do get to interact with our students on a daily basis. And they are the voice that is changing what policymaking looks like at the school board level for Miami-Dade. And who knows best than our students and our teachers? It's a little more complex for me to develop a teacher fellowship, but we're working on it because we want to make sure that, and not just teachers, but really, educators across the board are involved really in the decision making that affects them most. So I always say for community by community, and obviously in our education system, that really means students, teachers, people in the classrooms, in schools every day.
That really speaks to me and Zahira and our mission for the Mino Learning Collaborative, because when we were talking about all the work that we do in our classrooms, creating our own curriculum, trying to make it relevant to our students and their needs, and trying to mobilize our students as leaders in our community, we talked about, like, where could we start? Do we start with organizing? Do we start making phone calls? And in the beginning, we were like, no, we start with us, because like we are the people we're waiting for. Like, we're the educators in the classrooms that are doing this phenomenal work. And like, what is so much more powerful when we're working together and like being a collaborative. So that really speaks to me. I actually want to follow up with a question about your journey into the school board seat. I want to know, like, one, like, what was your journey? And then two, what advice do you have for young people who are also interested and following your footsteps and running for office?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I'll give you a very fast version of my journey, which was that I came to the U.S. when I was 8 years old, and that's really where my reflection of my story begins. I was extremely lucky and blessed to have incredible educators who saw a world for me that neither I or my mom could see yet for me, because I was an immigrant. I was learning English. I was, from the west side of US1, and that all painted a picture that my teachers, I got so lucky, did did not subscribe to, and they believed in me and they poured into me so that that belief could turn into action. And so I ended up at Core Reef Senior High School. I was extremely involved as a student and went to start a mentoring program for middle schoolers because I thought, oh my gosh, we all need to connect and we can do so much more. And when I went to fill out that form to become an official volunteer of the district, the top right-hand corner said social security number. And I asked my mom what my social was. And she looked at me and she said, you don't have one. And that's how I found out that I was an undocumented student and had been for all that time, which speaks to the beauty of our K-12 system in not having your status be a definition of whether you can get an education or not. But it also then presented tremendous challenges in continuing my education or even turning down jobs I was being offered, et cetera. I say all that to say that I was politicized by my story, by my experience, which I think is the case for a lot of people in BIPOC communities. We are just politicized by our very being, and that led me to become an activist, to get involved, first really advocating for the DREAM Act, which was the national proposed bill, still has not passed, but the watered down version of it is DACA. And through that involvement, understanding how complex the inequities that exist in our world are and being catalyzed to do more about them, and that turning up in many ways, including getting involved in student government at the college level. Once I transferred to Georgetown University after receiving my green card, getting involved with the Georgetown Scholars Program for first generation scholars, which I'm proudly one. And then studying education and political economy and choosing to, I was an assistant fourth grade teacher through that program. I was able to do a program with the Undersecretary of Education at the federal level, which, man, was mind blowing, and how policy actually gets made. And then running an after school literacy program for 3 years for third graders in a historically underserved community in Washington, D.C., where I felt like I had a lot more in common with our students than I did with my fellow tutors from Georgetown, and had to kind of flip the script there. And once I was in leadership, really repaint the picture of the assets that existed in the community we were working in and what it meant to come in and support, not save. And that was an interesting dynamic change, which served all of us well by the end of the program when I left. Then I came back home as an entrepreneur, which I can get into another day, but I own an ice cream company. I got investment, came back home, launched that, always with the lens of what I could do for the young people I was employing, because I employ high school and college students, and we do financial literacy to college and career advising.
Wow.
But missing my work in education, I joined the board of an education advocacy organization, started attending school board meetings, and sat in a school board meeting and was like, oh no, this is the lived experience that I see in the students at that point that I was mentoring and that were working in my business with what was being discussed was not aligning. And it also did not align with my lived experience as a student in our district. And I felt like I had to do something about it. So I took this very, very big leap of faith. What the outside world was telling me was a big leap of faith. What I felt was like, I have no choice but to do this. And I can talk about that fun ride.
Yeah, we were listening.
Okay,
We were
I am in.
And
Right.
plug for the ice cream, because that ice cream is good. So
Yes, we've had it together.
Before you push forward, do you mind wrapping that question up with thinking about your lived experiences, but what advice would you give to young people who are also interested in running for office?
And can I make a further push? I was gonna say, could we, those same people that you're giving advice to, thinking about the fact that they may not have the funds, political capital, or believe that they can make an impact on a local level?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are all very real challenges that we all face. And I certainly was facing them because I had not the funds needed to use what people usually do to do this. What I will say is, one, if not you, who, if not now, when, and that's extremely important. Like, you don't need permission to go build the world that you know your students deserve, or that you deserve as an educator. And a pattern that has served me well, that I advise anyone who's thinking of running for office or thinking about other elevated levels of leadership is have the audacity. The pattern for me has been, the more audacious I get, the more I accomplish things that people tell me aren't for me in the moment, but I just get audacious and believe they are anyway, and move toward that. But then I get really strategic, and that's the other key piece for how you do it when you don't have the funds or the network yet. Well, you get really strategic, and you, one, connect with organizations like Run for Something. Everyone should start there if you're interested in running for office. That help millennials and young people challenge the status quo and run for office and get the tools and habits and knowledge they need to be successful in that pursuit. The other thing you need to do is build your network. I don't care who you are, how old you are, where you are. From today, you already have a network, and you need to begin to grow it and be strategic. And this is kind of getting into the dorky stuff, but you should have a spreadsheet or an Airtable. I prefer Airtable, where you do track your network, and where you are putting everyone you know, and where you are keeping up to date contact information. And that seems so kind of like, what? Why are you giving us that advice? But I will tell you, it will be this secret tool and your key to winning when you end up running for office. And I'll just say, the money concern of what it takes to run a campaign that can win is real. But if you actually look, I was the person who had raised the least amount of money in my primary, and I moved on. In another race for the school board recently, there was another candidate who had raised the least amount of money and won. And so we still had to raise a lot of money, and it was hard, but building that network was what allowed us to tap into their networks and their networks to build the money necessary to be successful.
Thank you. That was really good advice. Yeah.
First of all, have the audacity.
Yes.
Stuck to me. It stuck to me. I'm chewing on that for the rest of the week.
Especially being a woman, like, if you want something, you just got to take it. I tell that to my kids all the time.
Yeah, people are not going to give you permission. You create that permission.
The thing that someone said, well-behaved women seldom make history. So
that's right.
So for anybody watching this, if you needed a hint or a clue or a sign, this was it.
There you go.
All right, so to follow up the next question, the 2020 election cycle has made Miami School Board more ethnically diverse and female. Luisa, you're one of 3 Latina women that were elected to the board. How does your background inform the decision you make as a school board member for a diverse population like Miami?
Well, I think that lived experience of being a certain type of student, let's say in our schools, certainly informs not only my decisions, but the way I look at making decisions, which is the important piece, because I do not have the lived experience of all kinds of different students in our schools, and I never will be able to understand their lived experience. And I humbly then know that it is just because I don't know that experience, or I'm not comfortable or familiar with it, doesn't mean I get to just pretend it doesn't exist. It means that I have to fight 10 times harder to have that voice at my table. And that's what we've done with our fellowship, with our, I don't know how many people know, but Miami-Dade County has citizen participation groups. And that's the mechanism by which this system in our policy has decided we listen to citizens. Well, I decided that, and board members appoint people to these groups. And so I decided for my appointees, I'm not just going to go into the circle of people I know. That's not representative of everything that's needed here. And so I actually opened it up for applications and blasted this application everywhere we could, and ended up getting incredible show of participation. I want to be involved. I want to apply for this. We ended up making appointments of teachers that I hadn't even met before, but applied. I met them. I think their value set at its core is aligned with what I'm fighting for. And now they're my strategic partners and representatives on these committees. And I'll share a quick story, which, you know, not many people know, but I think it highlights some of the challenges we face. And the story is I appointed a teacher, was told that there was a conflict of interest about a teacher being on this committee. And we do have policy that says that, policy 9140, if this committee monitors your livelihood, you can't serve on it. And I understand the logic behind that. This committee specifically that I appointed this person to not only did not reference that policy directly, but I felt like, and I ran this by a lot of people, did not actually monitor the livelihood of a teacher. And so I felt like the information I was given was just the way it had been forever, and no one had actually thought about why. And my argument was, if this is, according to policy, our mechanism for input, and it is a mechanism that does not allow a teacher to serve, then what are we doing here? Because that's who we need to be listening to. And so I'm happy to report we had to take it all the way to the state, to the Commission of Ethics, and they did serve an opinion that allowed for this appointment to go on. And so I'm very excited to see what this teacher will be able to accomplish on that committee.
Yes,
Energy.
yes, right.
Energy.
That really spoke to me. First of all, if you build it, they will come. So yes, like the fact that you just carved out a space. I think sometimes, and not even sometimes, a lot of times, because I hear and I talk about this a lot, which is like how the school districts in general lack like radical imagination, because you can't imagine what you have not seen. And because you haven't seen it, you're just like, this is just the way it's always been. And that's the way it goes. And sometimes a lot of times you just need someone to ask the question. And so I really appreciate you just building it without, like, what will happen if I create this space, and seeing that people will flood into it. And also just use that challenging the status quo with the scholarship program and these citizen participation groups for teachers. I know you have these initiatives going, and I know you're like really focused on your goals during your tenure as a school board member. Like, what can you explain a little bit more about those goals, and like how will you know you were successful?
Yeah, that's such a loaded question, because I want to change everything. Not everything. There's a lot of things that are great.
Turn it over. Just flip the table. Table.
No, and I will say honestly, being in the seat also gives you access to information that I think is so important to share, that the outside world doesn't get to see, when it comes to the good things and the things that are working well and the things that have changed. And I really have been able to see so much more of that, which also gives me a very necessary seed of hope, that there is a lot of stuff that I just didn't know. And of course, that doesn't take away the issue that like everyone should know that, and not just because I know it now, then we're good. Like, no, that people should be brought along in the process. So back to like what I hope will be different because of my being here. There's a lot, and at the highest levels, my main driver is building an equitable school system where every child can get an excellent education, regardless. We're meeting the needs of every student, no matter how varied those needs are. That's the overarching goal. Another huge part of how we do that is, how do we involve community in the process and really have a system that welcomes input at all levels, and that sees collaboration as a necessary exercise in meeting our goals, not as a maybe compliance thing to check off, and seeing the value in it. There are lots of initiatives that derive from equity around the digital divide, because in today's world, we see that this challenge is like the equivalent of shutting doors on kids when they were coming to school if we don't get it right soon, because of the world we live in. And so that has three kind of legs to the stool. One is devices. Are they capable? Are they affordable? Are they accessible? Are they timely handed out? The other part of that is is digital literacy. Do our teachers have the tools they need? Do our students have the tools they need? Do our families understand? And what training are we providing ongoing? And then the third part of that is connectivity, both at home and in our schools, in our school buildings, building the infrastructure necessary to have the right bandwidth, to have the right access that's reliable, affordable, accessible. And so just imagine, under the digital divide, those are three things I talked about, but they're huge, really, when you think about how to get them right for a school district of 350,000 students. It's huge challenges that take real time and effort. There, to give you some more specific examples of very kind of detailed things that that we are working on in the short term. Period poverty is one that we're applying extensive research into. It's not something that this district is very used to. Like, I don't think people even really know what it is. And access to sanitary products for all people who menstruate is really actually important and has been proven to be a barrier to accessing education. So we're also looking at ethnic studies programs as proven methods to ensure that students feel engaged and seen. And none of these are easy, but we're building all the infrastructure necessary to get there. We're looking at disability advocacy. We have not a lot, but we have a good portion of our students in our fellowship who are disability advocates and have such incredible ideas around how we make an equitable school system for all. Access, making sure that our meetings are accessible, and not only during at which time they happen, but how are they broadcast? Are they being broadcast on social media like other municipalities already do? We're looking at that. We're doing big stuff around building a sustainable school district with clean energy commitments for all across the board. And then a huge one, and there are two big ones. Of course, around our students and how we serve their needs, lowering the student to counselor ratio and the student social emotional learning. And then on the educator side, how are we supporting our teachers in developing to and becoming not just high quality educators, but people that are ready to continue serving and giving of themselves, and not just parts of a kind of factory system. How are we harnessing the creativity, curiosity, lived experience of our educators to turn it into the very powerful thing that it is, as opposed to diminishing it, which is unfortunately what I hear as the lived experience of many of our educators.
That's interesting you say that, because that's part of, like, I don't know if you were thinking the same thing when you were talking about like the power of educators. That's part of our mission statement. Like the Mino Learning Collaborative exists to harness the power of educators who empower students to change the world. Like that's our whole mission. Like we believe that teachers, for teachers, by teachers, that we're the change that we need to see. If we want to see changes in our curriculum, we need to make it. If we want to see changes in the way that our students learn, we need to make it. A lot of things that, like, one thing that you said that really spoke to me was when you were talking about the period poverty. It's like one of the, I had a girls group, and one of our projects that we wanted to do, like the kids came up to me and they said, we want to have pads inside of the bathroom. And I was like, all right, let's figure out a way to make this work.
Right.
But it was one of those things where it got really I don't know if the word's tight, because it wasn't about the money for me, because I would have just kept paying to put it back, but it was just like more like, all right, so where do we put them? Where do we make it where it's accessible?
System,
Yeah, it was like all about like the system, where it made it where it was one of those things where like they had to walk away from the project, and we ended up doing another community service project. So like that's something that our girls, they want, and they advocate for themselves and say that they need.
Is that, and I'm so curious, and we can also check in offline about this specific thing, but was it like literally the logistics of there's no like container or a place to put a container?
Let's just talk about it online, because yeah, we were talking.
But I agree.
Because
I will.
it wasn't the fact.
Yeah.
It was what I was told
Yeah.
about it being logistical. So we'll talk about that later.
Sounds good.
But I do want to elevate the point, not necessarily the details, but the point, Z, because Um, you know, I'm a firm believer, and Zaire and I talk about this all the time. Just like, like where you put your time is ethical. Like
Yeah.
your schedule is ethical,
Mhm.
right? Where you say you're going to commit your time to is ethical. And if you say we don't have the time to figure out the logistics for
Yeah.
this thing because of time or because of structure, and where you put your money is ethical, and
Mhm.
like it tells a story whether or not you open your mouth and say it's not important to you or not. And so like Zaire Girls Group is phenomenal, and that was a huge thing. But even before that, like the school was like battling to get the small trash cans in the room for the bathrooms for the
Yeah.
girls, and like getting order because it's just not necessarily a priority. So I just want to affirm you in all of the things that matter to us on the ground as a large district, with a lot of teachers and a lot of students, who kind of feel like numbers from time to time, but like digital literacy, digital divide, period poverty, social emotional learning are so important. And so I want to just affirm your work. Just thank you so much for even starting the conversation, because the conversation is the work. And if you are just even able to start conversations and people can continue to lead in this because you just empowered them and elevated their stories and elevated their voices, and I feel seen as a teacher, because I'm
Mm,
like, yes, this is what exactly, yes. And it's in the last thing I want to do for goes to the last question is just thank you as well for the accessibility point, because so many of the school board meetings are during the school day, and
yeah.
so we have so much to say, so
Yeah.
much to say, but like they have to take off of work. And I think that the Zoom, the quarantine and the switch to Zoom has really changed things too, just making things more accessible. I just hope that we can continue to move in that direction,
Yeah.
in terms of like making meetings accessible for educators to come and advocate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, last question. There have been many economic and social consequences of COVID-19, especially in our BIPOC communities. How do you think this will affect the policies we see in the future for our schools, students, and educators? How will these consequences be addressed?
Yeah. Well, all right. So the one, we have to know that this moment made so many things level up. And we don't have it perfect in it by any means, but so many things that people had been talking about that people said impossible would never happen. We had no choice but to make them happen during this pandemic, right? So we had to figure out how to get to homes and follow through on visiting people when you couldn't reach them with just a little email, right? We had to figure out how to communicate with parents and families where they were. So we had to get creative, and we had to meet their needs really. We had to figure out how we were going to get a device in every kid's hand, and we still have challenges there. We've made tremendous progress, but these are all things that were accelerated. So there's real room for opportunity and for taking the lessons learned of what does it look like to have blended learning, not in the way that we were forced to do it overnight, where we are not being intentional in the digital first pedagogy that we know exists, and that's not necessarily what we've been able to do because of the nature of how this has developed. But I think for me it's important that as we have an influx of federal dollars, which we're going to have because President Biden signed the bill today, and we're going to get all this money, right? It's one-time dollars, and it's not too restrictive, but it's certainly, unfortunately, because it is one-time dollars that need to be expended, will not be able to go, unfortunately, really to any kind of like teacher pay increase or salaries. It can't go to recurring expenses. So then thinking about that money equitably and how we use it to support our educators in meeting students' needs, of course, following Maslow's pyramid and making sure that our students are safe and well fed and are ready to learn, are in a mindset that isn't that is ready to take in the information. So I want to make sure that I share with you all, because we got some information when I joined the board about the academic kind of challenges we're facing. Um, Academically, in 1819, Black students were lagging 37 points behind their white counterparts in ELA, and Hispanic students were lagging 16 points behind their white counterparts, right? In math specifically, that disparity between Black and white students was 34 percentage points and 15 for Hispanic students, right? So these inequities actually have been exacerbated by this. But what I'm seeing and what I'm grateful for is the conversation is shifting to how we're going to tackle closing those achievement gaps and meeting the needs, not just how we're going to elevate all, but how we're going to make sure that it's equitable. Just, we don't care just about our average going up. We care that everybody is going to do what it takes to meet the place that we want for everyone of excellence, right? These consequences will be addressed by bringing in that additional fund to create more space for learning. Of course, you've all seen Spring Break Academy, Saturday school, summer school, extended learning days. The challenge that I'm hearing on the ground, and maybe you all agree or disagree, is our teachers are tired. They need a break too. They're not just robots. Just because you can pay them for Spring Break Academy doesn't mean they can just keep going and going and going. And so thinking creatively about how we're going to use those funds to be able to meet the needs of our educators and our students in a way that allows both to be in a place of being able to catch up on the loss and meeting all the needs outside of just the academics that will be necessary because of this pandemic.
Yeah, we can definitely co-sign in that we are very tired.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm
and
working Saturday, and I work Saturday Academy, and I'm working Spring Break Academy. I'm doing both.
and we're extending our days, and I think that like we know that we're doing it for a purpose. I think that when you're in something that's unprecedented, you have a really great opportunity to really reimagine spaces and do what we've always known is important at social emotional learning. The things that really change close gaps, right? Have allowed our students to feel seen in a pandemic, a situation where they might feel even more alone, and it's like it is exacerbating their situations that they already had. um, I think that like if we can not, sometimes, when you feel like you're in a bind, you tend to try to do more of what you were already doing. And I think this situation causes for a reimagining of like what our schools look like, how we spend our time, because it's not always like more time, it's just how we're using it. And teachers and schools having the freedom to make those decisions on behalf of their students. Like the students that are in front of us that we know the best, that I know your mom and I love you and we are family. How can I make a decision and have that freedom as a school and as a teacher to make the decisions that are going to be best for you so I can catch you up, as opposed to just stacking on time and stacking on more and more, because it's not always more time is how we use it. And
Yeah.
so I definitely, yes, to all of those things.
Yeah, that's a great point. And of course, continuing to listen to our teachers and trusting our teachers to know what their students need. And I know that's complex, right? Because there's challenges from the state. There are challenges from the federal level too. And sometimes those things don't add up to a place that allows, even at the district level, flexibility in what we do. There is flexibility, don't get me wrong, but I'm saying I'm learning just really how complex it can be. So for me, it's like, yeah, great, I'm a school board member and I continue my role as an advocate at the state and federal level to ensure that we create that environment for our teachers and students.
I appreciate that. And any work that you are doing that you like involves mobilizing teachers to help to advocate on our own behalf and educate and elevate the voices of our parents and our students as well. We are following you. We're always looking at what you're doing. So please also just let us know, because we believe that our amazing educators band together can do a lot as well. So thank you for that honesty.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I want to highlight for you and everyone who's going to watch this, the district is in the middle of our strategic planning process. So we are embarking on the next 5 years of what will be the written commitments of what this district is going to work on, right? So it's a really important time over the next 2 to 3 months to get involved. The district will be sending out surveys. We're going to have town halls for every district. Personally, through my office, we're launching kind of that effort in parallel to what the district is doing district-wide through our office, and we have a goal of reaching 999 stakeholders for District 9 within a short period of time through surveys and focus groups and individual interviews. And anyone watching, we need your voice and your perspective. So if you go to luisasantos.com right here, you will see, today's March 11th, by March 15th, you'll see a link to fill out our survey. And I encourage you to do both, the districts and mine, because your voice needs to be heard. And this is a really important time for what gets written down as commitment, which then is going to drive what gets, enforced and what people are held accountable to at the district level.
And do you know if this is happening across districts as well? Or is this...
Every district is going to have a town hall. If you go to strategicplan.dateschools.net, the website went up yesterday, so you can see which, if your district, the date and when you can go to the town hall. You will see the survey that you can fill out, and I don't know if any other school board members are launching their own kind of mini listening campaigns, but I don't care where you're from. If you're in Miami-Dade County, fill out my survey. I want to hear from you.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
That was the question. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
But this has been phenomenal.
Yes.
This has been phenomenal, very informative. I'm so glad that you, one, responded to our email. I know you're very, very busy in this crazy time, but you made time to talk to educators, and that means the world to us. And we cannot thank you enough. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for listening. And on behalf of the Learning Collaborative, we just want to thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we will be in touch. We'll be emailing, asking questions. We are now connected, so we'll ask lots of questions just to make sure that we're also giving out the most current and up-to-date information to the people who follow us and who are in the collaborative with us.
Absolutely. I want to thank you all for what you're doing, because you're right. We need to build a very healthy ecosystem of all stakeholders, and what you're doing in creating space and time for educators to come together and talk about these issues and then take action and take that power back of we all have a voice and we all have our role. So that is hugely important. And I can't wait to see how this grows and how you continue to empower all educators.
Thank you. We appreciate the love. So I think this is time for us to close out. Thank you again, Luisa Santos, everybody, Miami-Dade County Public School Board member, District 9. She's killing the game. And signing off, I'm Zahir Calloway.
And I'm Aisha Bryant. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.